February 28th, 1993. "It's showtime," ATF agent Steve Willis said to the driver sitting to his left as the truck pulled up in front of the door to the large complex. Willis was riding in the passenger seat of one of the two long-bed pickup trucks, each of which was towing a gooseneck cattle trailer. He flipped the selector lever on his suppressed Heckler & Koch MP5 SD submachine gun from the semi-auto position to the full automatic. The German H&K 9mm SD was one of the best submachine guns in existence. The integral suppressor added weight to the weapon and eliminated the gun's muzzle blast. Both the additional weight and the blast suppression reduced the subgun's recoil and made it one of the easiest to shoot full-auto weapons in the world. Henry Bowman, like most serious NFA weapons dealer, owned several 9mm H&K submachine guns. He used these as demonstrators for police departments, many of whom elected to order additional examples after they had seen how well the guns performed. Henry referred to his suppressed H&K as his girlfriend gun because his girlfriends had always been able to roll cans with it or put an entire 30-round magazine on a man target after only a few minutes of instruction and practice. The German-made weapon was very popular with law enforcement on both federal and state levels, and was a much better choice for officers with low gun skills than larger machine guns such as the Colt M16. Above the four-structure compound, 3 Texas Army National Guard helicopters circled. One of them, the command chopper, held Ted Royster, the head of the regional ATF office and the man who had overseen the Lawmaster raid. Royster smiled as he saw that the news crews were in position. He noted with satisfaction that the cattle trailers blocked the news camera's view of the front door. He did not want what was about to happen next to be recorded on film. "This'll make up for that fiasco in Tulsa," he thought happily. Up on the second floor of the building, Jadine Wendell was taking a nap. She had just finished nursing her 11-month-old baby. The baby was now in its crib, and Wendell had dozed off in an overstuffed armchair. Nursing always made her sleepy. As the 2 trucks with the cattle trailers attached pulled to a stop in front of the main building, David Koresh opened the front door. He held his 2-year-old daughter in one arm as he opened the door with the other. Koresh was a slender, bespectacled man, clean-shaven, and with a full head of curly hair which reached almost to his shoulders. Koresh was 32 years old, which made him the same age as ATF agent Willis. Unlike Willis, Koresh carried no weapons. He glanced up in the sky at the circling helicopters, looked over at the 2 huge trailers attached to the pickup trucks, and grinned. "Think you fellows brought enough Koresh's comment was cut short as Willis poked the 1 5/8-inch diameter muzzle of the suppressed machine gun out the passenger side of the window of the pickup truck and squeezed the trigger. Like virtually all members of tax collection departments and the vast majority of law enforcement personnel, other than the FBI and Secret Service, Willis had minimal skill and experience with firearms. He was further hampered by the somewhat awkward left-to-right shooting position inside the cab of the pickup truck. Finally, Willis made the mistake common to people whose real-life experience with machine guns was largely limited to movies and comic books. He assumed that since he had a gun that fired 12 bullets per second, he could not fail to miss a man's chest at a distance of 10 feet. ATF agent Willis was excited. He hurried the shot, and he did not push against the weapon as he fired to counteract the muzzle's slight tendency to rise and move away from the shooter's body as the gun chattered away on full automatic. The first shot of Willis's 8-round full auto burst hit David Koresh in the left side near his waist, and also clipped his wrist. The second slug was 20 inches left of the first and hit a foot higher. It hit David Koresh's 2-year-old daughter in the center of her chest, killing her instantly before exiting out her back and slamming into the far wall inside the building. The third bullet smashed through the doorframe just to the right of Koresh, splintering it. Shots 4 through 8 stitched a rising, angled pattern of holes into the outside wall of the building. The H&K suppressor effectively eliminated the muzzle blast of the pistol-caliber weapon, and the cab enclosure of the truck shielded the distant news crews from the lesser sounds of high-pressure gas coming out of the gun's ejection port. The half-dozen bullets slamming into the building at 700 miles per hour made a sizable racket, but the position of the cattle trailers blocked much of the noise from the news people who were about 300 yards away. The residents inside the building, however, were only a few yards away, and they knew exactly what was happening. David Koresh, bleeding from his arm and still holding his dead daughter, jumped back inside the building and slammed the door. "He shot us," Koresh gasped. "She's dead." Two of the other residents of the large building were standing near the windows and had seen Willis fire the burst at David and his daughter. When they saw that the girl was obviously dead, they shouldered their rifles and fired at Steve Willis as he was getting out of the cab of the pickup. The two men from the Mount Carmel religious group took the trouble to aim their weapons, and they killed the ATF agent instantly. When David Koresh had been retreating back into the building after being shot, the livestock trailers had opened up, discharging their cargo. 100 armed tax agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms had poured out onto the ground. They were wearing dark jumpsuits and tactical gear, and screaming at the top of their lungs. They were not shouting words, but rather emitting the attack noises they had learned in the simulated assaults they had practiced during the previous weeks. Most of the screaming agents began hurling concussion grenades at the windows of the compound. Before the attack, there had been brief discussion of issuing everyone on the raid fragmentation grenades, but that idea had been abandoned in favor of restricting their use to the specialized entry teams assigned to penetrate the building and kill anyone resisting. It was fortunate for the ATF men and women that the decision had gone that way. About a third of the grenades the taxmen were throwing were going wide of the windows, bouncing back off the building and landing on the ground directly in front of the federal agents. At the same time as the grenades were exploding on the first floor and the ground outside, the men in the helicopters began firing down onto the roofs of the building. Janine Wendell was abruptly awakened by all the noise. Like all mothers with infants, she immediately thought of her baby. "Huh? What? Sweetheart, are you all right?" The woman's half-awake thoughts were cut short by a 7.62 slug that tore through the ceiling and struck her in the top of the head. The bullet shattered her skull, penetrated her brain, and lodged against her jawbone, killing her instantly. Jadine Wendell was the third person killed in the first 30 seconds of the assault. The ATF agents from the first livestock trailer concentrated on the west wall of the building where the two trucks were parked. They threw grenades, took cover behind cars in the dirt parking area, and fired their pistols and submachine guns at the windows of the Mount Carmel compound. One of the agents, Dan Curtis, who owned one of the pickup trucks that had pulled the trailers into position, was taking aim with his 15-shot 9mm pistol when he saw Koresh briefly through one of the first-floor windows. Curtis altered his aim and squeezed the trigger. He smiled as he saw Koresh spin and fall under the impact of the 9mm slug, piercing his abdomen. While the load of tax agents from the first trailer concentrated on the main entrance, some of those from the second trailer ran around the southwest corner of the building and threw ladders up to the second floor. An entry team, commanded by Agent Bill Buford of the Little Rock, Arkansas ATF office, was trying to get to the section of the building where they thought Koresh had his bedroom and a weapons locker. There was a shallowly sloping roofed area over part of the first floor, and the ATF men threw two ladders up to it. Once they were standing on it, the second floor windows would be at waist level. "McKeon," Buford commanded, "you and those four ladder up to that window. Rest of you follow me." What happened next was captured by the news cameras of KWTX-TV and showed on news broadcasts hundreds of times around the nation in the following days. Agent Conway LeBleu drew his gun from his belt holster, when he was halfway up at the aluminum extension ladder. His finger was inside the trigger guard when his foot slipped on a rung of the ladder. For a horrible instant he realized that he had come very close to shooting himself in the thigh. After hesitating a moment, the shaken agent continued his climb and made his way onto the roof. The agents massed on the projecting rooftop while one of them smashed the window, threw the curtain aside, and looked in to make sure it was clear. "Shit, I hope those guys in the choppers watch where they're shooting," one of the agents yelled. A man in one of the Army helicopters was now hosing down the roof of the compound with long bursts from an M60 belt-fed machine gun. "Keep your heads down. Guys in front are going nuts, too." "Okay, all clear. Let's move in." Rob Williams, Todd McKeon, and Conway LeBleu climbed through the window into what they had been told was David Koresh's bedroom. Their information was out of date. Koresh had moved to a different section of the compound some time before. Bill Buford led the other group through a different window into an adjacent section of the building. Williams, McKeon, and LeBleu moved cautiously through the darkened room. Their nerves were strung tight as they listened to the helicopter rake the roof with full auto fire and heard the bullets ripping through the ceiling several rooms away. "I wish that guy would stay up by the northwest corner instead of shooting so close to here," Todd McKeon thought as he waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness. Muffled sounds of gunfire from the agents in front of the building continued unabated. As he visually identified his two companions in the dim light, McKeon subconsciously contemplated the body armor and ballistic helmet he was wearing. "They're heavy enough, but will they stop rifle bullets coming through the ceiling? Maybe if the wooden plaster is thick enough to really slow them down. Jesus, if it isn't, and if that guy up there in the chopper isn't No one ever knew why the agent outside on the roof decided to throw the stun grenade into the room. Some who later saw the film footage would claim he must have thought the men inside had moved into other parts of the building and were no longer in the bedrooms. Others would say that if he knew the agents were wearing ballistic helmets which would protect their ears from the concussion. Neither argument explained the logic of throwing a bomb into a room that was either empty or occupied by your own men. 3 of the members of the religious group had just finished checking on the children's dormitory. They left the 24 children huddled underneath their beds and were running towards the stairwell at the southeast corner of the complex when the grenade went off in Koresh's former bedroom. When the grenade exploded, the tax agents inside the empty bedroom reacted instinctively. They all began firing their submachine guns blindly, spraying the dark room in all directions with 9mm bullets. 7 rounds came through the wall near the man who had thrown the grenade, and viewers across the country saw him cringe as the holes appeared in the outside wall just a few feet from where he sat. The aramid fiber ballistic armor that the agents inside the bedroom were wearing was designed to stop standard lead-core, copper-jacketed pistol ammunition. Like most body armor, it offered little or no protection against rifle bullets. It was rated to stop most 9mm handgun ammunition, and the HK MP5 SD submachine gun that the agents were firing at each other was chambered for this round. However, there was one problem. The tax agents were not shooting standard 9mm ammunition. 15 years before, in an effort to develop a more effective 20mm projectile for air-to-air combat, an engineer at the Army's Edgewood Arsenal had come up with the idea of a bullet made of a hardened steel tube with the leading edge sharpened to a circular razor edge. During testing, this projectile bit into metal aircraft surfaces at angles where other rounds glanced off. An offshoot of this development was that the concept was scaled down to handgun ammunition. The result was a 9mm bullet, which acted like a tiny, spinning, razor-sharp cookie cutter, which went through soft body armor, as one government engineer put it, like shit through a goose. The feds were very excited about this finding and commissioned a subcontractor to produce the specialized ammunition in limited numbers. The round was nicknamed the Cyclone by federal agents that used it. It was these Cyclone rounds that the tax agents inside David Koresh's bedroom were now firing at each other, and their MP5 submachine guns were each spewing them out at a rate of 12 per second. Bill Buford and the other men heard the chattering of the suppressed submachine guns in the other room and saw bullets coming through the wall in front of them. The subguns sounded like several electric typewriters. "They've found 'em," Buford yelled as he took cover behind an oak chest and looked for something to shoot at. The 3 members of the religious camp knew that none of the residents were in that corner of the building. That meant that all the gunfire was coming from the raiders, and that there were a lot of them. The 3 men crept up the stairwell, dropped to their knees, and began firing their AR-15s upward through the ceiling and wall towards the attackers. The sound in the enclosed space was ear-splitting, but the 3 men gritted their teeth and ignored it.